It's 4:27 in the morning in Tokyo, and here's everything I've learned over the last 7 years of raising 4 kids in Japan. So I'm gonna pop you on my head, and we're gonna go run 10 miles, and I'll give you an insight every mile.
Begin workout.
Pretentious Engineer here. I know you didn't ask, but welcome to your weekly one-on-one, where I answer some of the internet's most challenging questions. Now, this is part of Dad Bod, which is focused on helping make fitness accessible to folks who are heavier set, have pre-existing health conditions, or prior sports injuries. And it's linked into a family frenzy, where we welcome folks into the frenzy of our world as we learn how to raise 4 kids in Japan. So happy you're here. Enjoy the run. I am having some challenges with my hip today, so I know I just promised 10 miles, but we'll see how far we get. All right, friends, mile 1. Here's your first insight. Fatherhood never goes according to plan. There's no perfect way to prescribe how to do dad life. Just like right now, there's no perfect way to prescribe what this running experience is supposed to be. I know with the camera on my side, it looks like I'm moving incredibly fast right now, but I'm walking because my hips say no. And I think as a dad, we often have to recognize the challenge and find modifications in pacing or path or plan. So I had prescribed that today was a 10-mile run because I have a half marathon in, I don't know, 4 weeks, 3 weeks. But I know my body. I know when things aren't working, where things are grinding to a halt. And even right now, I'm like, the farther I walk, the farther away from home I go, which means the return path becomes more complicated. And I think as dads, we have to recognize when we start to venture out farther than we can handle or tolerate. So a good example, like yesterday, I went to this dad squad thing in Tokyo. It was great. A couple like entrepreneurial dads got together and we did a play date in Shinjuku Koen. I think that's right. Or like it's like a little park, Shinjuku Chuo. It was some park for kids and they had like a splash pad. Overall, fantastic experience. I took 3 out of the 4 and just kind of let them like free play while I chatted and connected. But it was super hot. Kids started breaking down and the exit from that experience became challenging because we had to park like 15 minutes away, and then in my head I'm like, oh, parking's so expensive, it's taking us too long, I have to find a restaurant in the parking lot in order to get free parking so that I don't pay too much money. So like I started to get kind of stingy and also recognizing at the same time like my kids aren't ready to sit down at a restaurant. Like it's not gonna work. I'm gonna have to, you know, suck it up and pay for parking and just get these kids like crispy chicken and rice balls at Family Mart, which crispy chicken's great. But it was kind of this moment where I started to discern, okay, I'm overextended. As a father, I'm fatigued. This is hard. And there's no perfect exit, no perfect way to finish what we've started here. So adjust course and turn back. Now, it's funny because I was going to turn around right away and I'm like, I could probably keep going straight. There's a blue bridge up ahead. The blue bridge represents the 2.5 mile markers up there. And I'm like, maybe if I just adjust pace, I can actually get out that far. Part of me wants to just pull it back right now because I'm a mile in, it'd be 2 miles. Could probably go farther. I just have to adjust pace, which means I'm not going to be able to hold a jog and run 10. I'm going to walk and do 5 and hopefully loosen up hip. So that's your first motivation. Let me pop you on my head and I guess we'll keep going straight instead of turning around. But modifying your pace and adjusting to what fatherhood throws at you, that's the game, right? Because if I had gone into a restaurant experience, I would have started yelling at my kids, would have been rushing out, would have got home super fatigued. I mean, I was still fatigued from the event, but you can land things on a different level if you modify your pace. All right, see you in a minute. All right, well, somehow we have found the ability to run. It's within a very controlled range of motion, and it still feels very vulnerable. So here we are. By the way, if you're curious, before you get your little fatherly insight for mile 2, everything this way is Tokyo. Tokyo is actually a collection of smaller cities which are called wards, and it's technically, I believe, considered a prefecture, which if you come from a US context is like a state. So everything that way is Tokyo. Now if you were to swim across this river or climb over the bridge like a sane person, that would take you over there, which is Kanagawa Prefecture. And Kanagawa Prefecture contains 2 very important things. I mean, probably more than 2 things, like, you know, all the people that live there, but it contains Kawasaki, which is that city over there that I just showed you, but more importantly, Costco, which has made life in Japan possible, at least for the first 2.5 years. I'm slowly weaning off of it. I still haven't found the right place to purchase cheese besides Costco. But anyway, your second parenting insight, things I've learned over the last 7 years with 4 kids. Whew, breathe. Not breathe. I mean, breathing's important. Here, let's turn it this way. This way looks nicer. See? I'm not used to holding you in my left hand. And we're shooting the dark side of my face. That's more dramatic. The second piece, second insight, you likely care way too much about what other people think. Which sounds really obvious, but as a parent, you will naturally wear the stress and strain of your parents being in the room while you parent, or you being on an airplane with a newborn that completely blows out through their diaper right at takeoff, and you're just stuck holding a poopy screaming child until the stewardess lets you get up to change the diaper, and even then they start yelling at you to leave the bathroom because of turbulence, and you're like, I'm mid-process here, lady, this thing's got to be finished, right? Or living in Japan for me, coming in, like, you perceive that everyone's a little bit quieter, a little bit more respectful. Our kids are loud and brash, and we have a lot of them. And choosing to go out to a restaurant or choosing to use the trains and all these choices to go out into the world brings not only me, but the presence of my children into proximity with other folks. And you likely care way too much about what these other people think concerning your parenting style, whether you're kind and gentle enough with your words or too brash, or parents are really quick to judge other parents. And the reality is all this gets in the way. And even you probably have yourself on your own shoulder judging you and replaying certain moments. And I don't really think any of that's beneficial to the journey. I think covering the entire journey in grace is important. The recognition that there's no such thing as a perfect parent is important. Parents can make progress and grow. You can get better at it. It's a muscle that can be trained. We don't want people to pull out of the journey because, well, it's worse for everyone involved, right? I don't want folks becoming absent or neglectful. But if you're like me, I constantly perceive what everyone's thinking. And I don't know, I'm pretty good at it, so sometimes those thoughts of perception are right. But even if they're right, I can't 100% control the actions of my child in public. We can establish boundaries, we could turn things into a lesson or a game, but at the end of the day, my children will become their own person over time. And you do have to decouple from that, even though you're sharing space as a unit. Because if you feel insecure in public with your kids, you will then begin to coerce and control versus invite them to consider how they can modify their approach and how they can self-regulate, because you're not regulating. Anyway, that's mile 2.5 right there. I'm gonna pop you in my head, see if we can get all the way out to mile 3. That's this weird little walk trottle. All right, friends, mile 3, fatherhood is physical. And what I mean by that, we're not talking about corporal punishment or anything like that, but more just how challenging it is to run and play with your kids and bend down and pick them up. All these different actions that seem very trivial, depending on the stage at which you're having kids. We start to encounter different injuries if we haven't taken care of ourselves, and I'll go through some of those in my experience of recovery, that can actually inhibit our ability to parent and be present with our children from a physical perspective, whether it's wrestling, again, picking them up, throwing them around in the pool. A lot of these experiences can start to disappear if we don't care for ourselves, which is a huge part of who I am. Concerning rehabbing my body. But just to catch you up on the run before we get deeper into this insight, welcome to mile 3. We ran about 0.9 of it. What I've identified as my issue today, because I have all kinds of issues, a little bit of hip pain, and this is coming because my right hamstring is fatigued, sore, tight, haven't figured out exactly what's going on. But it's when I extend my right leg behind me, which for my form is actually really critical. So I lean forward when I run and I kick back, and I try to make sure my feet land under or slightly behind my center of gravity. And if I can't kick back, then my stride starts getting over center. And what happens with that is it starts to create a little bit more impact for me. And then I also have kind of a hypermobile, I have a lot of hypermobility actually. So I'm super flexy, which most people need more flexibility in their life. I actually need a lot more, or a lot less. So because of that, my sacrum can kind of sit loosely, and then it can put some pressure on my L5, I think that's the one that touches it, my spine, and that creates some sharp pain. So part of it is because my sacrum's not sitting center, it's a little bit loose today. Because I'm trying to like tuck my tailbone, hold my core tight, I'm not bracing very well. So all this is leading to poor form, which is why we're cutting it back. It's about it's 5:30 in the morning. So it's just a nice train. It's fun to look at. So we're cutting it back. My walking pace is about a 20-minute mile. My jogging pace floats between a 12 and a 14-minute mile. So at 20-minute miles, I should be able to get back to where I started the workout around 6:30, which gives me enough margin to go and be a dad and help with breakfast and drop off. Okay, back to fatherhood. So I have a lot of problems physically with my body. I played football in high school. I've been overweight the majority of my life. On paper, I'm still obese, but I'm fitter than I've been in probably a decade, honestly. But at my worst, I had 2 fully compressed discs. So they were like pancakes, and they were pushing into my spine. And it was creating tons of pain, really severe sciatica down the right side of my leg. If you haven't had sciatica, it's like if your leg falls asleep, you get pins and needles. And for me, it went all the way from my right glute to my knee. If it continues to get more severe, you could start to get drop foot, which means you can't flex or lift your toe when you're running. So that's really dangerous. Periodically, I can still get things like that. But I did probably 3-4 years of physical therapy. Worked on building core and back strength to address my hypermobility. 1 second. Whew. And at my worst, I was getting epidural injections every 2 weeks. Like the same medication they give delivering mothers, I was getting a shot in my spine so that I could regulate pain. I was waking up every hour and a half, totally immobilized, and then I would go for a run to just try to fight through the pain, which was actually just injuring myself more. So I'd run half a mile, sit down on a bench, wrestle with God in prayer, then run back. And the reason I share all that, it took me, I don't know, 6+ years to get things put together enough for me to run long distance, to do half marathons. And now that I'm working on knees over toe guy and eventually becoming certified with that, my mobility and strength through mobility is better than I think it's ever been since high school. Which means, like, if I want to engage my kids, my child is hitting their sister, right? Something very simple that happens all the time. Instead of standing away from them and yelling at them to stop, which still happens sometimes, by the way. I think every parent at one point yells something, because you can't always be in perfect proximity. But like, I can now go to my son, lunge down to his level, or sit what I like to call like ass to grass, like go in a full squat, but my butt's not touching the ground. You know, I'm sitting on my heels, and I could do that without pain. Hold it down there for 2 minutes and get on eye level with my child and talk with them and help ask the right questions so they can start to figure out, oh man, I should probably apologize. I should probably not do that. You get a completely different response out of your child when you get to their level. Have empathy with why they're doing things, even if they're bad, there's normally some motivation, whether it's a fight or flight response or something premeditated that's just faulty logic, but something in their brain has caused a suboptimal outcome. And if you can just get close to them, and I normally like squat down, I put my hands out halfway, I just ask them to hold on to my hands and I chat with them. Like, that connection restores or gives them dignity as we have a candid conversation to figure out, what can they do different? That outcome doesn't happen every day, but because I rehabbed my body, I've learned how to train, have the mobility and the strength, I can parent differently. So, fatherhood is physical. And if there's any areas where you don't have the ability to do that right now, if that makes your knees hurt thinking about it, let me know in the comments, right? Because that's, I think, a really important area to focus on that's often neglected. And I'm happy to help get you there little by little. All right, I'm gonna pop you in my head. We're gonna walk a mile and focus on core and keeping that sacrum tight. All right, mile 4, if the battery holds out. Stopping cues. And I'm not talking about telling your kids to stop and how to cue them to do that. I'm talking about you. You likely need to learn when to stop and be present in something. And let me explain. So there's this wonderful feature that was developed by this wonderful person on accident once upon a time. I think it was for Instagram, I can't remember, called bottomless scroll. You may recall a day, I don't know how old you are, when you go to social media, like, there would be an end to the feed. You would scroll and then you kind of reach bottom, you know, or for Google, you'd get to the end and it'd say go to the next page or whatever. You know, and basically that is called a stopping cue. Like, it would cue your brain, okay, you have scrolled, you have made it, now stop and do something different. A lot of social media and a lot of content, like if you think about Netflix, for instance, where they immediately start playing the next show most of the time. The next episode just auto starts. What else has it? YouTube can just play the next video without stopping. All of these features, including bottomless scroll, psychologically keep you from having a cue to stop and move to something different. Your bottomless inbox on email has no stopping cues. I mean, you finish one email, but then you get an alert of another one, right? And then you go and you interrupt whatever you're doing and go back to the box to clear it, to push it to 0. If you're one of those 0 inbox folks, addicted to that. And unfortunately, it causes us to lose presence with our children because we don't know when to stop these other things that are distracting us, and we just get lost in them, and then we miss minutes every day with our families, hours, weeks. It all adds up. Give me 1 second. It all adds up. So what you need to start to do is build stopping cues into your life. And there's areas where I'm looking to develop technology to enable that. Through a startup I'm beginning in Shibuya, but that's a whole nother video, whole nother conversation. But in the meantime, there's a lot you can do to actually create these cues to stop so that you can be more present. Give me 1 more second. I try not to be a bother to folks in Japan. That's why I wake up at like, well, today I did 3:15. I got woken up by a baby. Felicia, my wife, was like, hey, can you make him a bottle? I was like, yeah. And I fed him. And I got out the door at like 3:30. And now we're here together. It's great. So stopping cues are something you can embed into your routine. And it starts by figuring out, like, where are you wasting time? Whether a lot of us as dads, there's a stereotype that we just disappear into the bathroom. It can be very unnerving for our wives if they were like home all, and again, this is for more traditional family structures, which me and my wife don't have this dynamic as much. But if like the husband's off at work, the wife's been home with 1 to 7 kids or however many you have, you know, and then the dad comes home, goes to the bathroom and disappears for 40 minutes playing games on his phone or scrolling or watching a video. And it's like you're escaping from your day for a minute to decompress, but you're also like failing to engage really the most important part of your day on the home front, right? And then our spouse feels abandoned. I'm guilty of this at times. Yeah, so finding ways to know what is the mission I'm going into when I go to the bathroom and how do I leave. Like, it is a small choice, a small subtle shift. For me, I only read most of the time, or sometimes I do email and like leads generation, because I know I can do 3 or 4 messages and then leave and be done, versus let me start scrolling on TikTok. Nah. And I have a luxury now, a weird luxury, of we just moved a 13th time in the last 3 years into a small Japanese style home. It's a 3 LDK, which means 3 bedrooms, living room, dining room, kitchen. We have 4 children and we have 1 bathroom. So there's a lot of sensitivity about how to share in that space, which gives me all the stopping cue I need to not get lost in one of those like bottomless scroll suction pieces. Anyway, I'll leave it at that. Figure out where you're burning time, because the reality is you have enough time. You're just not using it the right way, and you're losing proximity with your children because you're giving it to somebody else, most likely these large content creation companies. Okay, let's get to mile 5. I'm feeling okay. I'm gonna put you on my head in a second, but I'm coming up on the Japanese person, so you could just look up at my chin if you want. Hey friends, mile 5. Now this is really interesting because I didn't expect to be here. This is also the mile 1 marker when we first started, and I was walking and had all that hip pain, and I was like, I don't know, we were gonna do 10 miles, we're not gonna keep going, blah blah blah, right? And then ta-da, we made it to mile 5. And I think in this run, the way things started, I never feel ready for any long run, no matter how I jump into it, whether it was I overstretched, I understretched, I'm fatigued from last week, I didn't work hard enough last week for it, I got too much sleep or not enough sleep, I don't have enough time to go far enough. There's all these like self-excluding thoughts and limiting perspectives that keep me from believing I can actually go a far distance. I never feel ready. And in the same way with parenting, I don't think we ever really feel ready to be a father. And it's a feeling that we drag along with us the entire journey. It's not just leading up to holding your child. I had a really vulnerable conversation with someone at a leadership meeting in Tokyo. It was really cool. She's an amazing person. I want to get to know her a little bit better. And she's a couple months pregnant. And she was asking me, like, when did you know you were a dad or a father? Because for her, her body's changing. She knows the reality of expecting to be a mother. And she went to the ultrasound, heard the heartbeat, got the picture. It was very emotional, very moving for her, and shared it with her partner. And her partner just seemed to be in a different headspace. And he didn't kind of emote the same emotions that she had. He didn't mirror her. And that caused a lot of insecurities. And we kind of processed and talked through all that. And for me, I was explaining, I didn't really feel like I was a dad or ready to be a dad until I was holding my child. It was never really real during my wife's pregnancy. But even after that, it took weeks and months to start to feel more like a father. For those of you who have never had a child yet, they don't emote initially. They cry and they exist. They don't know how to smile, which is something I don't know, I assumed would happen much sooner. So they don't really give you anything back. You're just holding this living thing you're now responsible for. And I say that because throughout the entire journey of parenting, as my son's gotten older, now he's 7, as I'm interacting with him and his sisters, Akari and Emiko, and having a fourth in the mix, there are so many moments when I don't feel ready for what the day holds, for what they need, for what I can give. And the journey of fatherhood's always unfolding incrementally, and that identity grows over time, right? So I just want to encourage you, if you're in an unplanned pregnancy right now or something like that, it's okay that it feels weird. One second. Yeah, just like this run with all the pain we were navigating in the beginning and all the uncertainty, if you're navigating, for instance, an unforeseen pregnancy, stay in it. Stay in the journey and just trust that you'll become enough. You'll rise to the occasion. You'll make yourself good enough. And you'll work at it. And if you show up every day, even when it's hard, you'll have a good outcome down the road when you launch those kids off into the world. At least that's my hope. All right, let's do one more mile. All right, friends, that's mile 8. No, it is not. That is mile 6. I wish. We did 9 last week, so I just gotta trust that I'll be up to snuff when it's time for my half marathon. There's always a bump in the road. Anyway, your key insight, your 6th insight for parenting. What is it? I had it. I lost it. I got distracted. Oh no. Now I'm just gonna make you listen to me ramble till I find it again. It was really, really, really good. Figured it out. There's no such thing as work-life balance. Rather, I'm a big fan of an integrated life where everything touches and overlaps. And I think that having a thriving career, as well as being a present father, are not mutually exclusive. They can cross over. And often we experience pressure in one context or the other that we can't have both. And I just fundamentally reject that. Give me 1 second as I walk past a new friend. Yes, they're not mutually exclusive. You can have a thriving career that's fulfilling and provides value to the world at large without neglecting and losing presence in your home. It takes intention. It takes diligent incremental improvement in how you run your life. 1 more second. But it also takes community. It takes having people around you that also believe the same thing as you, that you can have both, whether it's colleagues within your workplace, whether it's friends outside of it, individuals that can help you recognize when you're not living into those values or believing it to be possible. Because you can establish boundaries in both spaces. There are moments where my son's got to play upstairs because I got to record a video, because that's my job now. But there are other moments where I have to push off meetings and connections for a week so that I can be home and not miss experiences that are critical. So that's your last lingering thought, is you can do both, and I'm here for you in the journey, and I believe that you'll build the life you truly desire. But anyway, friends, I'm a busy guy. I do my pod on the run. So I'll see you on the next one. Keep changing the world. You can sip on that.